Well, there, hello everyone. Here, talk about for a future explained story right here, and a lot of times it sure seems that way. That if you're going to be writing a story about something, and let's just say if one of those is maybe going to be about, how you met somebody, or it could also maybe be about, maybe a certain skill that you developed whenever you were young, or something like that. But let's just say on average, though, that if you're going to be writing a story talking about the future, though, and like everybody else might even say that, number one, that you may have thought is to where that, it all starts by saying is to where, yeah, that Lego set that you always wanted whenever you were a kid, or maybe if it was, anything about what's called that skateboard or something like that that you wanted. But still, that if we're talking about the future right here, and you're talking about for what the future holds, right? So a lot of times you might even think too that you want to go and start the sentence by saying as toward that, if I had this, or maybe if I had that, and then maybe I would be able to learn how to do this, and how to do that. So yeah, if I had this, and if I had that. But talk about for imagination as power with a strong courage when it comes to studying about what the future holds, right? And so this right here is this the sentences right here of indicating about understanding about the future, right? So anybody that might even say that, even if you put the year on there for July 25th of 2024, or maybe if you do put for 2023. So let's just say that if you're going to be starting out that the letter talking about the future, that you're going more likely, yeah, like how many of us are going to maybe say that you go ahead and put the date on there, and you might even start talking about a lot of things that maybe not everybody's really going to understand, really, and or maybe that just as something that you want to add to that sentence, and one of those is maybe going to be such as yeah, future power. And so I know, like everybody else might even say that if you're going to be writing a cover letter talking about the future, right, in 102, that you start out the sentence by saying, incredible, absolutely incredible, or something like that. But you have right here of talking about for a future is born right here, and I use this word right here, phrase, just stating to where that a lot of the things that for what we call they are unimaginable, such as is like whenever we're talking about supercomputers, but then also that a college education, number one. So I know that with me though that whenever I was doing the studies about a lot of talking about yeah, understanding about a college education, that a lot of things back whenever I was 10 years old, and probably thinking too is toward the back whenever you were young, that 102, a lot of things that you want to have back whenever you were young, and a lot of things that you want to see and all that. And so what exactly does that mean, a future is born? Well, I could even tell anybody too that even on my resume that talking about is just toward a future, a future is awaiting, right? And so it sure seems that way that what exactly do we want to tell our kids whenever it comes to the future, right? And it's all about the stuff that hasn't happened yet. And so when we talk about the stuff that hasn't happened yet, and I can go put on here, underline this right here, talk about for the hard work. And so if I were to mention that hard work right here, and like all the other kids might even say that even if you did work hard enough, that it seems like that you might find something inside that work. I'm like, oh yeah, if you go ahead and put like talking about right here, I talk about stickers, and I know a lot of times it sure seems that way that whenever I mention stickers, a lot of times everybody else might even say that yeah, well, stickers a lot of times that teachers would maybe find that those stickers fascinating just because that after they grade the work, and let's just say that if you were to be writing a paragraph or two about something that you've always wanted to do, maybe learning a new dance, or maybe learning about something, learning a certain technique or skill or something like that. And at 102, that some of these teachers maybe put on there like, yeah, just mark a sticker right there, just knowing that, okay, yeah, that makes a little bit of sense, but no, not really. I don't know what you mean by that. And so a lot of times it sure seems that way that each time, if we were to be writing any sort of a sentence, though, and talking about for the future, right? And let's just say that on average, though, that if I were to include in a sentence to where it has not happened yet, for the best of our choice, the best of our choice, right? And so if I were to put it like maybe in parenthesis marks or something like the best of our choice, and then best of our choice, knowing for who agrees. So that's usually whenever I mention about a future is born, I also am talking about is this toward that whenever you do talk to somebody about something that you've been working on, and let's just say that if you're able to develop a team of those who do support your idea, so a lot of times it seems like it's all about kind of getting ideas ready, getting those ideas ready, and it seems like to me that a lot of companies would say that maybe not all ideas, but still quite a few of them, like anybody say to yeah, well really that. Without those ideas, and then maybe that companies might even say that really that they're really going to be. It seems like they're always going to be asking for your feedback, right? And sometimes it seems like that even if you do provide feedback, that it that may or may not change anything really. But on your hand, that the source of saying that I'm talking about is based on the fact about you go ahead and tell a story talking about supercomputers. It could also be talking about what's soon to come in the near future, right? So it's like, yeah, if is a future really born, or if it's over the fact about for how your work was discovered. So this right here could maybe contain about maybe up to maybe 300 or 400 paragraphs with me just saying a few words right here, and one of those words is maybe going to include something like that for what's soon to come, or for knowing about so it sure seems that way that people might even say too that whenever you order something that I can go ahead and try to put that in a complete sentence right here. Whenever you order something that you request that item to be received. So let's just say that on average, though, that received. But so let's just say on average, though, that if you're going to be telling a story or just talking about stuff that for what's soon to come in the near future, and 102, that how would you want to? And I know that a lot of times it sure seems that way that whenever you do write a sentence, so that the professional way of how to write a sentence, I guess, will be is to go ahead and leave at least two double space that and then start a new sentence right down there. And I'd like to think is to where if you want to go ahead and add anything in there, such as is to where, codes. And that's another thing that I want to talk about right here, talk about for codes, is that the special made codes that allow a personnel to have that that capability a lot of the work. So it sure seems that way that yeah. The capability. Yeah, like anybody say that yeah, have ability or capability, but still any. But talk about right here of whenever it comes to understanding about yeah, words that have a complete sentence and all, but still that have that that ability. I'm trying to say capability, but have that they have that ability to where you can. No, that's not what I'm trying to say. They have that capability. The word I'm looking for, yeah, it's right there, but have the capabilities, but anyway, but they have right here, or talk about for codes right here. So let's just say that on average, though, that like everybody else might even say too, that that whenever you're going to be writing a complete sentence about something and a 102, that what exactly is it that you're talking about? What exactly are you referring to? So it sure seems that way, that if you're going to be starting out a sentence by indicating that all this, if all this writing right here was supposed to be something indicating about, like, yeah, is this supposed to be like maybe yeah, analysis or something like that, or something that needs to be explained on yeah, journal writing or something like, but still that so let's just say that if I were to be writing a letter, talking about something, talk about the future of technology, or it could also be something that be working with, and like anybody might even say too, that if you're going to be talking about the future, though, that's supposed to be a bias toward it. Those who are really counting on your word of saying toward it, yeah, a probability and then a possibility that's soon to come, but then also the strengths and then encouragement about what advice that you have to give to some about something. And so it sure seems that way, that when we think about the future all the time, that it seems like that that a lot of times, like everybody else might even say that that a lot of things, it sure seems that way. It all starts by saying is toward it. Yeah, since I was a kid, I always dreamed about doing this, or I always imagined about having that, having that capability. And I can tell everybody here too that it was actually, yeah, recording my voice, and also it was, drawing pictures, but then also that another thing that I was thinking about too, about having though, is toward it that yeah, talking about for a future is born, is that knowing about that that what exactly do you see coming within the next 4 years from now, and then how do you think that you will be able to explain that? And I could probably think as toward it, yeah, besides the automobiles, and besides maybe maybe the portable device or compatible devices or something like that. But on the other hand, too, that what I mean by a future is born is toward a future that goes by my suggestions, planning ahead. So a lot of times that I could be honest with everybody here too, that's exactly how I feel about the situation toward it. That every time I do talk about my future, though, that like it sure seems that way. That yeah, planning ahead of time, and it's like every time you think about that, though, it's like really that why do you really want to plan ahead of time whenever a lot of things that you're still working on, maybe a lot of things that already happened from nearly 2 years ago, that you're still you still got a lot that you're still working on, and you want to know too that why is it that you would spend more time planning ahead of time rather than to be going back and making corrections and maybe editing any source of document, stuff like that. But on the other hand, too, that it seems like to where that when we speak about the future, though, the one thing that we can keep in mind, though, is toward that a lot of the facts that had not yet been unfolded and all that, and so that's why it sure seems that way. That every time we think about the future, though, that it's like a reality that I guess not everybody sees yet, and so it sure seems that way. That if ain't that really what a lot of the jobs out there that are paying the big bucks, and if anything, they are really giving you advanced futures, is knowing about for what's available out there in the near future, and a lot of things that have not been discovered yet, right? So that's why it sure seems that way. That do we really have to say that it's born, or if anything, it's discovered? And like everybody else might even say too, that if you were to say something like that, it needs to be discovered first before it could be born. But at the time, you want to know too that whenever something is discovered and compared to when something is born, and I guess the key differences are really about the fact that for whose idea it was, just to be able to come up with that probability. And so a lot of times it sure seems that way, that if you're going to be writing a story about stuff coming up in the near future, and want to know too that a lot of that stuff, which I'm sure that it would make more sense maybe if there's more results provided, or for any reason at all, that if you got somebody who knows who's in that type of study field. But the way I think about it too, though, that when we speak about the future, though, that it's like, we're talking about 4 years from now. What exactly do you see that's going to be going on in the near future whenever it comes to supercomputers, and whenever it comes to understanding about, for what's next ahead? And I can tell everybody here too, talk about for supercomputers. Computers that know to develop an understanding, and I can go and put on here to develop an understanding about how how us, I can go and put on here how us operate, use the technology. So a lot of times it sure seems that way, that when we have maybe a talking watch, or maybe if it's a talking smartphone, or maybe any other source of gadget, that what source of microchips that are built into that technology just to give that capability. And like everybody else might even say that whenever it comes to technology that speaks on its own, or talk about the super fast technology, I'm talking about up to 8G coming, and so it sure seems that way, that like the super powerful gadgets and technology. And so it sure seems that way, that like everybody else might even say too, that really, that the more powerful it is, and more likely that people are going to say that they're going to want to use it. The faster it is, and then the more reliable it is, that somebody's going to want to use it. And so that's why it sure seems that way, that when we speak about technology, though, and you're likely thinking is that whenever it comes to understanding about technology, talk about for planning ahead, but on the other hand, that when we speak about the future, though, that for items to be received, but I'm like, that's that right there. For what hasn't happened yet, for the best of our choices. So I know with me, though, that every time I think about that, I also keep thinking too that when we speak about the future, though, whenever I talk about my future, though, there are a lot of times that I'm always thinking about the things that I really highly recommend, and just thinking as toward you go ahead and take a guess on what's soon to come in the near future, and find out that within the next 2 or 3 years, and then find out that yeah, by what company that makes it, stuff like that. But on the other hand, that when we speak about talking about the future of technology, though, that are we necessarily thinking about is this tool that does it really need to be born and developed, or if anything, just about just knowing as toward it when we speak about the future, though, the stuff that hasn't happened yet, right? And so that's why with me, though, that if I'm going to be talking about the future, though, that it's like 102, yeah, based on the suggestions, and then talking about is that for what is soon to come. For what is soon to come, and then talk about, yeah, it's the internet. The internet's I'm like, yeah, the internet's already here, but I can also put on here that what do you think the next source of technology is going to be other than the Wi-Fi network, and I can go ahead and put on here. Now, like, you can maybe give it a title or something like that, but talking about with Stylo, I can go ahead, like, yeah, what name do you want to go ahead and use? I can go ahead and maybe put on here that, yeah, how about I put on, Megotech. I can just use that right there, yeah, Megotech. Megotech, and that'll be the name I can go and give it for right now. Megotech is the technology is born. So what I mean by born is that it's another way of stating to where that it's soon to become available. And I know a lot of ways it sure seems that way, that when we speak about the future of technology, and you talk about for the future, right? And you want to know too that when we speak about the future, though, that it's the stuff that hasn't happened yet. So it's like, say, it hasn't happened yet. So that's why it seems like that whenever you try to piece together the story and want to know about what makes more sense, whenever you actually see and discover what it is and what and how it works and all that. But still, that but whenever I mention about a future is born, also is that I'm also talking about based on what I suggest. And so, like, anybody might even say too that, yeah, if you're going to be writing a story, you talk about a future is born, and you'll want to know too that hey, that whenever we speak about a future is born, a lot of times that I can say that if it's really born, or if anything, something to be discovered. But I also think too is toward if you were to really suggest something to come in the near future, if you were to be talking about that, likely even on a cover letter, that why would anybody I'm like, yeah, talk about for special made codes that allow a person to have those capabilities. And what I mean by code, and I can go and put on here, right here on the bottom somewhere, that what I mean by code is that if you were to go ahead and use, Gada or something like that, Gada. You got a left, and then I can go and put on here with what symbol do I want to go ahead and use? I can go and put on here equals, and then you put like a certain character for for UI MK, something like that. So what really I'm like, if you were to like, if that right there will be set for any other source of example of a code. And it, like I guess you could say, is toward that that's more likely that that's a language that you're given the the website. And to me, though, that sounds more like everybody else might even say that from what you're talking about, that it goes from a cover letter to an actual an HTML document. So, like anybody might even say that when we're talking about for a source code or something like that, for what's soon to come, that it's like, yeah, each source of markup language, right? But on the other hand, too, that whenever you start thinking of ideas of what you want to use, and by the time you actually try them and want to know if they're going to work or not, and at the time you're probably thinking that to where, well, really, that a lot of times, if you see something that's going to work, and chances are that maybe that everybody is maybe a few people are going to say if they're going to agree or if they're not going to agree on being able to to use that method. And so that's why it sure seems that way, that whenever it comes to understanding about our future, though, and it seems like how many people are really listening to my advice and my opinions about what I got to say about something. But still, but talk about for our future is power, right? So let's just say that if there's a lot of companies and businesses that are counting on a lot of the stuff that's soon to come in the future. And so it sure seems that way, that whenever we do talk about the future a lot of times, that everybody might even say that, yeah, well, really, whenever you do talk about the future a lot of times, not everybody's really going to know what exactly that you're talking about in general. So it sure seems that way, that yeah, so if we're going to be writing a sentence or two about something, talking about the future, and let's just say that number one, it could also maybe be about the dollar signs or something like that, or like any other sorts of smiley face or something like that. But on the other hand, it seems like that whenever we speak about the future, that whenever it comes to understanding about our future, though, that the things that you really want to talk about, though, are toward the soon to come future. So let's just say that for what's soon to come is maybe going to be is toward it have these these chip. I'm like, yeah, the chip readers that are installed. Yeah, so as I say, a lot of things that for what's soon to come in the future, right? But I'm thinking about a few things that are soon to come by the year 2023, actually, and so it sure seems that way, that people might say that if you're familiar with this and how this works, and but still, but on the other hand, that when we talk about the future, though, that it sure seems that way, that whenever you do start writing about for what's soon to come in the near future, and you want to start out the sentence by saying is toward it for I choose for the best possibility right here. So what I mean by that is toward it whenever I choose something like, yeah, that I recommend, I see the future for what I see for what's coming in the near future. Talk about for supercomputers, right? But with these supercomputers I'm talking about are the type of supercomputers that to where that computers that are powerful enough to where that whenever you do use them, that they had that ability to where that they're like, yeah, they're able to control them, like for how we use them nowadays. And it's like, yeah, that's really yeah, it's like, yeah, it's like everybody else may even say too, that it's pretty much changed the way I'm like, yeah, the way, but still that and with the internet and everything, but still that but let's just say that for what's soon to come is maybe going to be about the fact about that computers, that with a lot of the computers that contain microchips on these portable devices. So let's just say that it goes by stating toward it from back in the 70s that all started with these, you know, with these computers that were like the size of refrigerator size computers. Yeah, a whole full room full of computers that would equal the same data as compared to the for what we have now. But still that. But I know with me though that whenever I do speak about computers, though, I'm also talking about the type of computers to where that that whenever you do use a computer that we're talking about is to where while you're away from your computer and just making sure that the computer needs to recognize who's trying to gain access to that. And so that's why it sure seems that way that really that when we do operate with a computer a lot of times that it sure seems that way that extra security, and also whenever it comes to doing a lot of your work and a lot of your database and all that. But still that but if I were to be talking about the future, though, talking about for a future is born, though, that it seems like to where a lot of the possibilities that I've been thinking about, and like anybody say, is toward if you're going to be writing down any goals and achievements that you've been working hard on, and it sure seems that way toward it. The first thing that you really want to suggest, though, that for what you would like to achieve, though, and one of those would more likely be is toward your future is born, and a lot of things the things that you like to have, and a lot of things that you've always wanted to do and all that. But still that but when we speak about the future, though, that the first thing that really comes to my mind, it seems to be, is toward that so totally impossible. So it sure seems that way well, really, that are you really too shy really to talk about the future just because that people may think that you're crazy about that, or the future is born. Talk about for imagination as power. With the strong, but I don't know if I read everybody. I don't know if I read this whole paragraph right here to everybody, but this right here talk about for what possibility, just because it hasn't happened yet, and a lot of us would think that after 10 years of waiting seems to be is to where goes by, so by saying that the measure is toward that it will happen at some point. And so it sure seems that way that you call that maybe a probability, and also but also the hard work that measures based on for what's soon to come. For what goes on with the progress ongoing. And so every time, so when we think about the future, though, that do we really need to think about all the time toward that the things that have not yet happened yet compared to the things that are waiting to happen, and of course the things, a lot of the possibilities that are still waiting to happen. So it sure seems that way that if you were to be writing a story about something, and a lot of the probabilities that are expected to soon to come, and you want to know too that are we really going to maybe think about that as to where a lot of those possibilities are born, or if that's just really a title that you gave to it? But I'm like, well, really, I use that title just indicating to where that a lot of the things that I've been working hard on for the past 2 years, and like anybody else would say too, that a lot of the things that you explained right here, including the technology and a lot of things for what you talked about, for what's soon to come and all that. And let's just say that if you were to guess correctly on a few of those things, and that's really what I was talking about for a future is born. But on the other hand, too, that we're also talking about is that when we speak about the future, though, that we're also talking about is to where that whenever we speak about the future, that really that shouldn't the future also be another source of power to where allows somebody to better understand about your research, about what you came up with and what you learned and what you had to share, to tell to somebody else, and a lot of times it seems like that the first thing that I would probably say is toward the best of my choice. So anything that you talked about right here, there is no rules and requirements yet whenever we're talking about the future, right? And so it sure seems that way, that I really like talking about it, mainly about the fact, just because of the fact that that there's really no rules about for what no rules and restrictions about the future though. When we're talking about the present, it seems like we're always talking about the rules. Okay, yeah, the rules of what you got to follow, the rules and regulations for what you have to obey and all that. But when we talk about the future, it seems like that, yeah, well, a lot of that stuff is really not into play yet. And so that's another reason maybe why I like talking about the future a lot of times, is because that maybe you don't really have all those rules and requirements. And whenever it comes to learning new things, and whenever it comes to going by orders and whatever, but still. So that's really the lot of ways that, like everybody else might even say too, that when we're talking about the future though, that we're talking about the possibilities, and with those possibilities, it's going to be about the fact about that the hard work that you put into something, and want to know too if it works. And but the way I think about it too though, that whenever it comes to hard work and measuring based on for what goes on and the progress ongoing, and so a lot of times, what does that mean right there? And but I'm just saying though that we might even think that whenever it comes to writing a story or talking about the possibilities, right? And really, like everybody else might even say, that should you really even keep it, a secret, or if anything, that you just wait until that probability to happen. But I just really think too that whenever you're going to be writing a story talking about the future though, and like everybody else might even say that it could maybe be it don't even really have to be about technology really. Like it could also be about what your future holds, and whenever it comes to besides the technology, it could also be about maybe investment or something like that. So let's just say that for investments is toward a planning ahead to have your ideas ready for how much money you like to save. So it sure seems that way that whenever it comes to writing a few words in a complete sentence and all that, but when we talk about the future though, like maybe not everybody can really see what you're talking about, what you're referring to, and a lot of times it sure seems that way that every time if I were to put the date on this right here, and people may want to know too, is toward it well, that right there, well, that must be a mistake or a misunderstanding or something like that. But still, it sure seems that way that why is it that we cannot look ahead and think and hope for the best and think of the best, besides somebody that's maybe going to always think is to or assume is to or, well, you might be incorrect about that, but still, I talk about for hope for the best. So it sure seems that way that when we speak about the future though, and you want to know too that why is it that most of the time that whenever you're going to be talking about the future though, it's the stuff that hasn't happened yet, and when we're talking about the things that haven't happened yet, and that maybe of course that's another reason maybe why it don't really make any sense right now at the moment, or maybe not everybody really fully understands the purpose of that and the situation. So that's why it sure seems that way, that when we do talk about the future, that why does it have to be any more confusing than what it already is? And that's why it sure seems that way, that one title you give to it is A Future is Born, and maybe another title that you can also give to it is toward talking about the another title I can maybe also give to it is toward it talking about for the great choice by the chosen by the chosen by the chosen voice. So would that be also be another title that I can also give it to? A great choice by the chosen voice. And so that's why it sure seems that way, that people might even say that you go ahead and write down maybe about 4 or 5 paragraphs of something that you're trying to say, and let's just say that maybe within the next year or two, and people may say that well, if you're right or wrong about something, and knowing about if this something works, but still, on the other hand, that we're also talking about is toward it getting to know the possibilities, getting to know something. A lot of times it sure seems that way, that do you think that should really be what it's about? Getting to know. So a lot of stuff, it has not happened yet. Getting to know the possibilities, getting to know what is soon to come. And that's why it sure seems that way, that each time I think about this, I keep thinking that, that seems to be so impossible, just because of the fact that, really, that, the 21st century, and who knows by the time the 23rd or 24th century gets here, and they probably thinking too is toward what all that they'll have. But on the other hand, it's like, you talk about stories about, talk about for the future though. And, one of those things that's going to be coming in the near future though, and toward if it's space travel, or if it's anything such as tour that, you can now, I'm like, maybe if it's, a lot of other things, a lot of examples I can probably give. But on the other hand, that this right here talks about technology right here, and so really that the technology that I'm also referring to is toward it whenever it comes to whenever it comes to about understanding about technology, about how our technology is used, and how the tools of the technology is used a lot of times. And so it sure seems that way, that we have the technology in our homes, right? But a lot of times it seems like that we can now take it on the go with us. And technology, on the go. And I can go and put on here, the on the go. So it sure seems that way, that that whenever we speak about the technology though, and technology on the go, and you'll likely want to know too that that whenever you say on the go, that means that you don't have to deal with no wires, or if anything, it's battery operated. And so it sure seems that way, that it goes by saying as to where a lot of things that we see nowadays, it seems like that's usually what I see, battery operated, or advanced charged features, or something like that, touch screens. But on the other hand, that when we also speak about technology though, that it sure seems that way, that whenever was it really born, or if anything discovered, or for any reason at all that I was actually talking about a college education. But on the other hand, too, it sure seems that way that whenever we do speak about technology, that probably thinking is toward yeah, well, it was actually a gift, and but it sure seems that way that when we do speak about technology, though, that do we necessarily think about as to where do we really have control over what should be available, for the years to come? So a lot of us will maybe 102 that is toward that you hear about that toward that this is required or that's the rule about something. But when if we were to be writing a page talking about the future, though, you are making a suggestion, right? You are making a suggestion and you are adding something. So let's just say, on average, though, if you were to be writing a paper like this, and you write in a few paragraphs on there, maybe suggesting something, and maybe anything that you would request for the student to come, right? And so that's another reason maybe why that I would include a lot of this right here to talk about for what's soon to come. You are making a suggestion about what the companies should use and what the companies should have. What's soon to be discovered, and so it sure seems that way that when we think about the future, though, that it's like you want to know too that whenever you do write about something, and a lot of it that may not even make any sense right away, and like everybody else might even say that okay, when you mean by a future is born, you're also talking about is toward that the stuff that's yet to be discovered, and maybe if you're still working on it, something like that, but really, is it really born, or if anything, that if you were just using it a word or phrase is toward it, yeah, it was on my 13th birthday that, if I can recall, it was a remote control car. Like a lot of things that you enjoy getting on, even on your birthday in a 102, that you set your birthday to have an achievement, and one of those achievements, yeah, college degree or a job or anything such as is toward it. That if you were to make a suggestion, and then companies are willing to follow up about that, and but on the other hand, it seems like that when we speak about the future, though, that it's like yeah, you might even think that a lot of stuff that still, if it's still waiting to happen, and maybe if a lot of it is still yet to be discovered, right? But on the other hand, I just really think too that whenever we talk about the future is born, we're also talking about the future. That a lot of things to be yet discovered, right? And so it sure seems that way that that a lot of things that you hear about and want to know too that really everything that we thought and dreamed about being invented at some point. Do you think that maybe that almost everything else that we thought that we didn't think that was considered a not a reality, and to find out that it becomes a reality, and that's why it sure seems that way. That yeah, talk about for reality right here. A lot of things that you may have seen on in those movies a lot of times, and 102 that yeah, well really, for what we call the stuff that what we call from what we see in reality. And you want to know too that yeah, well, even if it does exist now, that maybe not everybody is really going to know how to use it, and even if they did, would they even bother to even take time to learn it? But on the other hand too, it sure seems that way that whenever you're trying to tell somebody about something, the stuff that exists today, and people say, yeah, well, I have no clue what you're talking about, but yeah, well, I'm not going to bother with it, but still. But on the other hand, that when we do speak about the future, though, that we're also talking about is to where that our present also relies on a lot of information too. So we're talking about is to where that if we were to do the calculations right there about how many minutes are equal to a year, and 102, if we're talking about maybe up to 3,000 minutes or something like that, but like everybody else might even say that if you were to be given this probability about what's soon to come in the near future, like what's soon to come on market in year 102, that what's soon to come, that 102, yeah, well, really, that whenever you start talking about the future a lot of times, are you really guessing about what's soon to come, or are you really just, assume like, yeah, just brainstorming any ideas or anything like that? But the way I think about too, though, that whenever it comes to understanding about our future technology, right, and say that yeah, recognized in the college degree, and for most of my goals and achievements, and but whenever it comes to understanding about technology, that I can go and put on here, talking about the ideas for what talk about for investments, but still talk about for codes, and then also whenever it comes to understanding about how computers, understanding about supercomputers, that kind of computers that become powerful enough to where they're able to recognize for what goes on whenever it comes to software development, but the type of computer to where that you're like the type of computer development, which I could probably see that on a lot of the iPhones, actually. Like anybody say that you talk about for the iPhone, and then the Samsungs and Nokias and other devices, but on the other hand too, that when we speak about the future, though, that whenever we do talk about the future, though, that I just really think, though, that you are pretty much are thinking as to we're trying to guess at what's soon to come, but then also making a suggestion and comment about that this is what you would like to see happening in the next 4 years from now, next 5 years from now, that the things that haven't happened yet, and that's why it sure seems that way, that every time we think about that U102, that we're really that's just a bunch of talking, right? That's just a bunch of talking, like everybody else might even say that if that's really going to be a bunch of talking, no, and 102 that how do you know? Figuring out. I can also put on here too that figure out. Figure out that the important possibility. So it sure seems that way, just like solving a puzzle, right? That important possibility, and just like solving a puzzle, that whenever you're working a puzzle, though, you're pretty much you're trying to piece together something, and maybe something that fits more of what comes to your mind a lot of times. So each time I do write about something, and a lot of times I always have to think that, okay, does that make sense, or does that look good, the way that that's written and all. But still, that it sure seems that way, that almost everything things seem to be much harder whenever you try them out, don't they? Whenever you think, it seems like whenever you think, it seems to be much easier. Everything seems to be much easier whenever you think about it. Yeah, everything seems to be much easier about them compared to when you try. So even if you're taking even if you are taking a test a lot of times, you always want to know and ask that question to where the why is it that it seems to be much harder when you try something out. When you try out a skill, whenever you try out an exercise, that why is it that seems to be much harder when you try than compared to when you think about it? And I know, like everybody else might even be thinking too about that same topic, that why is it that seems to be a much more difficult challenge whenever you try it than compared to whenever you think about it. And it sure seems that way. That number one, that it's like, yeah, well, really, that do you really? I'm like, yeah, do you really have to have the right tools and maybe the right equipment just to be able to do it? Or if anything, it seems like, yeah, it uses more energy, and I can just yeah, it uses energy, and effort. So what do I mean by that? Well, I mean by that whenever you do try something out, it seems to be a lot more complicated than what you thought it was. So it's like, yeah, well, I didn't think, yeah, like a little, just a little bit, yeah, cause and effect, and yeah, cause and effect, just a little bit. Whenever you do try something out, a lot of times it seems like it's the cause and effect. So every time you think about that though, and they say is toward you try something and then something goes wrong, or whenever you try something that the overall expectation, and it seems like that yeah, the overall expectation. What was the expectation from what you were expecting whenever you try something out? So that's why it sure seems that way. That do you think that on average though, that just to make you feel a little bit better, that you wouldn't want to say that, yeah, you go ahead and draw a picture, or maybe just add a sticker right there, like if you're trying to, yeah. And I really don't know if, like everybody else might say, that if you're trying to set a goal or achievement, would it help to go ahead and draw a smiley face or just some sort of face right next to a word of sentences toward it, yeah, step by step instructions on what you gotta do just to be able to achieve that goal. And like everybody else might say that, yeah, what does that usually mean if you were to include a sticker on something like that? And 102, if you're working really hard on something, that maybe that like any source of signs and symbols about what you're trying to tell that somebody else about how hard you worked on something, and I would maybe say that, yeah, would that be recommended just to just to start out with something? And let's just say that if you're trying to work real hard on something, and let's just say that if you're trying to make some more common sense about it, and you're going to maybe say something like, yeah, for our future isn't like talk about for it is all about that moment of time to where has not happened yet. And so it sure seems that way, that for it has not happened yet. And so if you were to be reading this to somebody else, and 102 is to where that yeah, it hasn't happened yet. So you go ahead and include a sticker right there, and people might even say that yeah, well, really, that you include a sticker right there. And if you were to read that to somebody, and just 102, that yeah, well, it it makes a little bit more sense now, just because that you put more hard work into it, or just because that they're able to get a better understanding about what you were talking about. And so when we speak about the future, though, that we're talking about most of the time is like, yeah, for what's soon to come, or for what hasn't happened yet, and also the best possibilities, right? And that's why it sure seems that way, that every time you try out a new skill or you try something new, it sure seems that way, that everything seems to be so totally different than compared to whenever you actually think about it. And whenever you think about it, it's like, yeah, you have you got your mind set for what you want to use and what you want to try, and then by the time you actually start working on it, and then you just start getting tired, or maybe that yeah, everything seems to be so totally different whenever you try out something, and 102 that yeah, so it sure seems that way that for what uh, for what we call magic. But on your hand, that when we're speaking about the future, though, that talk about for the gift of kindness, right, is toward if somebody else sees how hard that you worked on something, and you may want to know too, that is toward yeah, the best choice is the best of our choice, and so these are the words that I'm really also looking for right here, is toward the hope, hope for the best, and then the best of the choice. So if I were to be talking about something, for like any source of goal or achievement, and everybody else might even say that yeah, that whenever you plan ahead of time, you are making a suggestion, and you're also guessing and assuming for what's soon to come, and in a lot of ways, it feels like saying is toward you feel proud if you are right, whenever it comes to solving a problem a lot of times. So it sure seems that way that every time you think about that though, and I want to know too that are you trying to set the rules and requirements whenever it comes to something whenever it comes to new technology and whenever it comes to discovering something new. Like yeah, well I do like it that way. And if anything, a lot of times, why is it that maybe one rule and maybe one suggestion that really cannot come into play? Such as if you want to make a suggestion about something, then why is it that at least one of those ideas cannot really come into play? Such as to where yeah, companies are willing to use that technique, at least one of them, and one of those techniques is maybe going to be a bias as toward yeah, well, really that when we're talking about the future of technology, though, we're talking about yeah, studying about maybe batteries and maybe yeah, the screensavers and maybe wallpaper designs, stuff like that, satellite view, and so that's why it sure seems that way that every time I think about that, though, I'm also thinking about as to where that for what the future is mixed about the possibility, right? And so it sure seems that way that whenever I do write about something, and by the time you actually try it out, and it's like based on for what I experienced, and it sure seems that way that yeah, it's everything seems to be so totally different whenever you try something out, but now it sure seems that way that whenever you do, yeah, if you have enough energy to be able to work on something, and that's why it sure seems that way. That what's the best solution for that? Well, like everybody else might even say that whenever you do, if you're trying to work hard on something, and let's just say if you're trying to achieve it, before you get to be too tired, then think about something. Yeah, think about something that's most interesting. So let's just say that if there's going to maybe be a title that seems to be getting boring, or something like that, and you'll want to know too that think about something interesting that you want to read about, and like yeah. So let's just say that yeah, if I were to use the title such as it's all about you. So let's just say if we were to use it right there. So like everybody else might even say that yeah, all about you, and so let's just say if you were to use it for a title right there, for all about you, and want to know too that yeah, would do you think that this the future should be? I'm like yeah, if you're going to be setting any sorts of goals and achievements a lot of times, and you want to know too that you want to go ahead and like yeah, well, what about you that you want to talk about? And so it's like yeah, like people might say that you want to know too whenever you do play those video games a lot of times. It seems like there's always rules and achievements, and also there's also all these regulations about for how you gotta play the game, and maybe you can only earn points maybe if you go by these rules of the game and all that. But still, so it sure seems that way. If you were to start out the title by stating toward that you're all about you, do you think that sounds more interesting. The things that you want to talk about and read about. And so if you want to kind of give it, what's called the 5 stars, and people might say that, talk about the stars right here. 102, yeah, a star and set, like, yeah. Put a trophy right there. Maybe put about, 3 or 4 of those trophies right there. But still, so it sure seems that way that whenever we speak about the future, though, and 102, that whenever it comes to whenever you're trying to work hard on something, it sure seems that way that the first thing that you think about is toward the overall expectation about something, and 102, that hey, that almost everything that you've tried, that whenever you think about it, right, whenever you think about it, but then whenever you actually write down and try to work on it, it seems to be it's taking up more energy, and so that's why it seems like that, to where that really, that all about you, the things that you write about and the things that you're thinking about. And but one thing that I can maybe tell everybody here too is to where what's one thing that you can get done in a half an hour. And like that would probably be like any doctor, I don't know about any doctor, but doctors can maybe even say too that you'll give give yeah give yourself 30 minutes. Give yourself 30 minutes, or an hour. I can just, I'm like, yeah, or 15. I'm like, yeah. What do I want to use here? I'll say 30 minutes. And give yourself 30 minutes to be able to concentrate on about your greatest achievements. So it sure seems that way, like everybody else might even say that 30 minutes, and like 102, that sometimes doctors might even say that well, really, that give your mind a pause and just to think about all the goals and achievements that you've been working on, and but still that name one thing that's considered good about the work that you do. And let's just say that name one thing out of the 12 hours that you've been working on, or maybe out of the whole week that you've been working on it, name one achievement that you've been able to accomplish. And I'm sure, like if I say that, that would make a difference there too. So that's why it sure seems that way, that when we speak about, the future is born, talk about for our achievements though. And that's why it sure seems that way, that, really, was it really born, or was it really about the fact about, to soon to be discovered? But on the other hand, too, that we're also talking about is to where that when we're talking about for having an open mind for what's soon to come in the near future, and talk about so for the best of possibility is great. But anyway, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.